So our first talk of this set is going to be Jason. He's actually an engineer at Google now, but he has a previous history and expertise in running meetup groups, which is something that's close to my heart and something that I spend a lot of time doing. So I'm really excited to hear what he has to say about that. So everyone give a hand to Jason.
Hey. Cool, thanks. So usually I'm kind of like behind the scenes doing stuff. I'm not used to being up in front of people and talking about it, but this is something that I get pretty excited about. And I know lots of other folks in the room also run user groups and maybe are thinking about doing this because it kind of comes up a lot in conversations when I come to events like this. So I've internalized and been like iterating on a lot of ideas around how to run leadership groups and how to manage organizing local communities. And I've never really taken the time to kind of write it down or put it in some kind of format other people could digest. So let's go ahead and give it a shot here. I used to live in Los Angeles. I recently relocated to the South Bay. And while I was down in LA, I was running a user group along with 3 or 4 other people called JSLA. And we were focusing on all things JavaScript. And that's front-end stuff, back-end node.js stuff, and anything that was even remotely interesting. So new HTML5 APIs and things like that. Just things that were like weird and kind of out there, we would do it. If it was just somewhat even loosely related to JavaScript, we try to get a presentation on it. So my title mentions the word successful. And when I say successful user group, I don't mean the size of the thing or like the ability to fly out, known speakers or things like that. When I say successful, I mean the people that come are excited about it. I mean the organizers are excited about it and want to keep doing it and don't burn out after a while. And I also mean that if you have a leadership group kind of running your organization, if you're able to transfer leadership, to me that's successful too because you've helped create something that's long lasting and it isn't actually yours. Other people care about it enough to keep it rolling. So, yeah, I don't know. All right. So it's important to me to have some kind of professional support group, have an understanding shoulder to cry on, to just kind of vent about things. And also get a diversity of experience you don't normally get talking to your coworkers. So talk to other people that are working in your problem space, but not the exact problems you're working on, and you get a nice kind of diverse mix of like ideas, and you learn about new tools and things, and it's nice to be able to take that back to your day job and kind of apply that experience. So sometimes we just, we want to vent about anti-patterns too, or we just want to complain to someone who understands, what we're talking about. I complain to my dog, but he doesn't understand what I'm saying. And sometimes we just want to find collaborators too. We might be thinking about a neat project we want to work on and maybe try and rope some other people into it. And we know that people, by having a group that we can go to, we might know other people in our area that might be a willing participant, or we can kind of, pull them in. And then, like I mentioned before, the diversity experience, these interactions and the ability to have passionate and professional conversations around practice and tools, for me are really what separate craftsmen, from kind of hacks. And speaking candidly about your profession with people you don't work with can also be very liberating too. You get a different perspective when you're talking about these problems. I don't mean to make it sound like it's a good idea to be completely immersed in developer culture all the time, because it's definitely not. And if you choose to run a user group, you're going to get kind of like high doses of this stuff. So make sure to like do things that are not related to computers, like go outside on the weekends and things like that. But also when it comes to running the user group, you want to make sure that you have a diverse and passionate kind of topics and people that you're working with, because that'll also, for a whole host of other reasons you want to do that, but it also will prevent your own burnout, because it's just not the same thing, more of the same over and over and over. All right. So how do you do this? If you want to start a user group, how do you go about it, and how do you ensure that that you're making something that's good and worthwhile, and that it warrants people coming out to your thing? Really, you can replace community with culture in this slide. And there are signals, things like artifacts that kind of point to it, but culture itself is intangible. Remember, culture is simultaneously cyclical and emergent. It takes input and feedback to make things happen. To really have any effect, you need to be part of this emergent process. You see, community, at least from my perspective, it isn't a thing that exists. It's a thing you participate in. And like I alluded to before, our culture is always changing and adapting. So as soon as you think you figured it out, it's going to change on you. You have to be a willing participant and collaborator. This is different from just being out in front or kind of being in charge. You have to care about it. And this comes out in the final product, and people can feel it, and it's visceral. Like, even if you're not the person that's up giving presentations to your group, you're the person kind of behind the scenes. It's still the feeling and the caring that you kind of put into that, it percolates out to like everyone else that you kind of come in contact with. For me, a prerequisite to being an organizer of a user group is the drive to curate and create an environment that you actually want to participate in. So remember, what's good is subjective to your audience, and you won't know what that is unless you're part of it. So on the topic of visceral participation, when I was younger, I was in some really bad punk and hardcore bands. I used to book a lot of local shows and tours, and if I could really distill the subculture's ethos down to 3 words, it would be do it yourself. It doesn't have to be perfect, you just have to do it, and learn as you go and iterate from there. Another aspect of the DIY ethic that's really relevant here is that you can take any physical place and make it the perfect spot, time, place and time for your user group. It doesn't have to be a perfect, the venue itself like does not have to be perfect, right? Like it doesn't have to have all these fancy things or any of that. Like you just have to have the want and all the people in the place at the same time. So, right. So yeah, do-it-yourself ethic and temporary autonomous zones. What does it have to do with running a user group? You see, when we started the thing in LA, LA isn't really known as a tech hub. I mean, you think of LA and tech isn't the first thing that pops in your head. It probably invokes visions of traffic and beaches and movie stars, but all stereotypes aside, LA had a pretty sad tech thing going on. It seems odd because there's a lot of history there and there's good schools and things like that. It just seemed, something was off, right? And I've always had to travel out of town to meet my people in the world, like meet folks like you, and kind of get this feeling that I wanted. And when I told people I was from LA, I would get this look like I crawled out of some pre-Mulholland desert, right? Like it was just like, what do you do in LA? That's a weird place to do tech. And I'm pretty sure this, unless you guys are from the Bay Area, I'm pretty sure this situation is pretty similar to yours. Most likely there's some really interesting things happening in your neighborhood, but people doing them just don't know about conferences like this or have the ability to to hop on a plane and show up. So if you provide a time and place for them to come together, you're going to be surprised at the things that you discover. These 2 kids are part of a group called Urban Text. It's a nonprofit organization that runs a summer program teaching underprivileged youth in South Central basically how to make products and startups. And they have this whole thing, it's like a boot camp they run through. They learn how to make JavaScript and cobble together PHP and make actual applications. So it was really fun. I actually got to go and help some of these kids learn JavaScript. But I never would have known about it if we didn't start the group, and these kids just started showing up. They're just like, oh, JavaScript. And we're like, what are these kids? What? So yeah, you'll be surprised. So right before we started the group in Los Angeles, a buddy of mine that runs LA DevOps and I were having lunch, and we were kind of mulling over why are things so dismal here? Why is it so bad? And we were able to really distill it down to 3 kind of key pieces that were missing. It was content, leadership, and consistency. There was some stuff going on at the time, but it was poorly organized. So people would go to the wrong venue, or they would go to the right venue on the wrong night, and it's just kind of a mess. And then if you did end up going to one, the topics would be just intro to whatever framework that's not that cool, and I don't know, like, why would you want to sit through that? So we knew we weren't alone, that we just needed to kind of step up and see what we could do, if we could pull it off. So one night, John Bender sends out a tweet, and he says, hey, I have the js.la domain up for grabs if anyone wants it. And after having lunch with my friend, and we were kind of complaining about this stuff, it's like, it's destiny, we'll just pick it up, and it's a sign, we'll just run for it. And I'd like to say that we struggled a bunch and did all this trial and error, but it really didn't unfold that way. It was some work to get the first couple of meetups set up, but after that, it was really just a practice of efficiency and networking and communication. Once you do the first one's going to be the hardest, and once you do that, it'll just kind of happen naturally, especially if you get some help. So saying, like, when you go to a bad meetup and just saying like, oh, that that meetup was bad because of the presenter or because of the topic. It's really, to me, that's not good enough. You have to apply some deeper systems thinking to the problem. Really think about why it was bad, what you liked or didn't like about it. Sometimes focusing on the good aspects is a lot better than focusing kind of on the negative, and then you can amplify those. And that's not just for your user group, right? It's any that you go to. You can kind of soak this stuff in and reapply it. So if you're starting a web components group and notice that there's already a JavaScript group, you don't need to ask them permission. You just need to go and do your thing and start it. Additionally, like sometimes you'll see that there are a lot of defunct groups on Meetup. So there might be something that's related or the same exact group that you want, but you see they haven't met in a while. Don't worry about it. Just again, do your own thing. Do be polite. So if you see that there is another group or an active group in your area, try not to step on their night. And if they're focusing around the same topics as you, it's nice to give them a heads up. Usually what that turns into is or the way I would phrase it is you would ask them for help, really, right? You're not saying like, hey, you're not fighting over territory or space, because there's plenty of people and your topics are probably going to be different. But most likely your goals are going to be aligned and you guys can actually end up helping each other out. So yeah, related to this thing, just be aware that they're there, but don't be wary of entering the fray. You want to think long-term about what you're trying to do. Not exactly, I don't mean logistically, right? I mean, what do you want to get out of it? What do you want other people to get out of it? How do you want to feel about it in 3 months or 4 months or 5 months? Even in a year, what would you like to see? You don't have to have, very clear idea what this is, just as long as it's in your mind and you're kind of thinking about it. You need that basis of comparison as you're going through and people are giving you feedback so you know if you're on track or not. This slide kind of speaks for itself. You just really need to care about the content and the quality. Don't pander to the status quo. You want to push things forward and get excited and get inspired. If you don't want to go to your event, no one else is going to want to go to your event. If you're making something that you're not proud of, I would say just don't bother. But you do want to take into account people's feedback and make sure you're doing a good job to find out if you're messing up or if you can do anything better. You can also use this feedback cycle as a way to help rope in other people. So if someone's giving you feedback and they're like, hey, it'd be a lot better if you had presentations on this thing or help people how to do, run browser tests or whatever. You could say, that's a great idea. Do you want to present on it the next time? Usually they say no, but then it kind of gets the wheel turning and you can kind of keep asking them anytime they give you feedback. And it's a good way to involve other people. So some people probably won't agree with this, which is fine. You should definitely experiment with different formats and things like that. But instead, I would say try to nurture an environment that is amenable to newcomers. And that means that it's friendly and outgoing. It's okay to heckle the speakers or ask questions. Your more experienced developers will only tolerate so many boring talks before they decide to never come back. And usually, the newcomers, even if they don't quite understand what was being talked about, they're still going to come back, and they're going to ask questions, and they're going to talk to the folks around them, during drinks or during the break and things. And that helps with your kind of social cohesion and kind of get a better sense of where the group is at in general. Yeah, at least try to do this. It's really hard. One thing we really like to do, instead of intros, we like to reach out to people and get topics that are just kind of out there, more like mad science stuff. We've had Substack come down. We've had Faraz come down. These people that are working on things that are like really pushing the boundaries of what you can do with JavaScript. And most of the people that come aren't going to be doing these kind of things. But it's exciting because you can be like, oh, this skill set I have can actually afford me to do these other things that are very inspiring. We want to remind people how fun and magical programming can be, right? So after a long day of kind of just mashing on the keyboard and sitting in traffic, you don't want to sit through another, here's how to make a to-do application in this random framework. It's got to be something that's inspiring, both to you and the people who come. So you want to be excited and curate things that inspire you. This is one of the JSLA organizers, Mike Matuzak. He's showing off, he hacked a NES system and got JavaScript to actually run on a real NES. And he's like showing off how to do it on a Power Glove. totally, like you're not going to go to work and do this stuff, right? Like you're not going to show this to your boss, and yeah. But it's really exciting, and other people like understand how hard this is, and it goes back to the inspiration thing I was talking about. You want to get passionate speakers. Sometimes what they are talking about isn't as important as having them talk about something that they're very excited about, and this really, really comes out, and it's really engaging, and it makes people want to kind of come back to your user group, and also helps kind of pull people into the presentation. One of my favorite tricks is the book speakers about 3 months in advance. So this seems excessive, but really allows you some freedom and the ability to have a backup plan in case things go wrong. Speakers are going to kind of cancel on you, or a speaker might come up that's a similar topic to another one, and you can, if you have that buffer, you can kind of move them around so that your single events can have this kind of uniform topic around them. And having that freedom is really nice. You don't want to be kind of scrambling at the last minute, a week before your event, trying to get someone to do it, because that'll impact all the other things I was talking about. How passionate is your speaker going to be if you only had 2 days to put together his slides and wasn't quite sure about it? So just really be prepared for things to go wrong, and also let your speakers know kind of what you're up to. Just don't tell them, oh, you're gonna speak in 3 months, and never talk to them again. Just say, hey, you're gonna speak in 3 months, but we might have cancellation, so I'll bump you up. That kind of stuff. The venue, like I mentioned before with the punk rock stuff and the temporary autonomous zone, the venue doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be the right size and have enough space. So it depends on the format, but nearly any venue will work. And be really courteous. It's good to have lasting relationships with these venues. So that means helping pick up trash, asking them if there's anything you can do to help, or volunteering other people in your group to do these things. Also make sure that the venue is something that's accommodating to your locale. At JSLA, we have this goal to switch between east and west coasts, or east and west sides of Los Angeles. It's very hard to get across town in traffic. So by switching off, we actually provide opportunity for people in different locations to come out. What actually ended up started happening is people just drove to the event no matter what. So like switching it around didn't matter that much, but yeah. So you want to treat, venues give you time and space, and you should give them something in return. And I would also say that you shouldn't pay for space. You can find a venue that sees value in your group's interests, and then be able to exchange that value for their time. Ask for help. Get help from people who have run other groups. It's hard to do all this stuff by yourself. You're going to need a sponsor and a venue and speakers and chairs, and each one of those things spawns off like 10 emails. So it's hard to keep track of. So if you get help, you can kind of split up this work. You also need help for other things like the day of the event, like getting ice and napkins and ordering pizza and all this stuff. So pop in IRC or on Twitter, ask people for help. You'll be surprised who's just going to jump out of the woodwork and help you out. And it's also going to save you a ton of stress in the long run. So when we first started, we noticed there was an old meetup group called SoCalJS, and they were trying to get started at the same exact time we were. So we shot them an email and had lunch with them, and we decided, you know what, instead of having two competing groups on different ends of town, we'll just combine and make one group and go back and forth. And it ended up saving us a lot of time because we had 4 organizers instead of 1 or 2. And that also allowed us to be able to split things up and share resources. Also, other organizers will have other user groups. This is really good because they can bring in some experience that you might not have. So if they've run successful user groups or have any experience doing like the logistical stuff around that, that's a good benefit. It's important to get things done when you have co-organizers. So it can be hard to get immediate feedback from others, and sometimes this can block you from getting anything done in a reasonable amount of time. I'd say instead to be sure to split things up so that one person is responsible for a single aspect, and then allow them the space and freedom to get their job done. Some things you have to ask about to move forward, but if something comes up and it's mission critical, don't allow the need for consensus to block you on that. Just make a decision and move on. You can undo it later if it ends up being the wrong thing. But sometimes you waiting 10 minutes to make a response to a sponsor or a venue can mean them not getting back to you for a week or two, and you want to prevent situations like that. So you want to prevent confusion, intentional or not. Don't afford the participants the opportunity to garble your message. So things like GitHub issues and traditional type mailing lists where people can reply and it goes to everybody in the group. Those things are great in some regards, but if you're running a user group, it's best to have this one direction flow of information coming out that's official, because the other methods of communication can be very confusing. So if you say, hey, it's at this venue and this is where you should park, and then someone replies to that and says, wait, where should we park? And then it turns into this giant mess and it's confusing and people go to the wrong place. Really, really avoid that. So we use a MailChimp newsletter. People can reply to it. It still goes to us and we can answer their questions, but no one else in the group can see that. That's really, really important. And then Twitter and our website. So all of these places have the same information and it just kind of disseminates in one direction. We don't really expose the kind of internal chatter for the organizers to the group. Anyone who wants to help out can jump in and participate. We allow that, but the actual communication mechanisms that we have don't. So get sponsors and charge a reasonable amount and be very clear about what you get out of it and what you're going to deliver to them. Whether that's time in front of the group or tweets or things in the mailing list, just be very consistent with the pricing and don't be afraid to charge too much. But also don't tell one sponsor one amount and then another sponsor another amount because they actually talk to each other. So just be very, very consistent about this stuff. And most likely whatever amount you decide to charge, it's going to be nominal compared to the marketing and recruiting budgets for even smaller startups. You'll be really surprised because if you have like 80 people, that's $300 worth of pizza, right? Like you're not going to want to put that on your personal card. So you get a sponsor. Most people will be like, oh yeah, here, whatever you guys need. And it's okay to have more than one sponsor. This can allow you to fly in and out of town guests. This really helps with the diversity aspect. So guest speakers can be the ones that you actually choose, the ones that you want to come and present to your group, instead of the ones that just have corporate sponsors or trying to sell, whatever. So this really helps with the content and quality aspect too. You want to balance the value of your sponsors with your audience's time and attention. So you don't make it feel too pitchy. It could be good to have sponsors be participants too. So it's better if you have a sponsor that kind of comes up between the talks and says, hey, we're this company and we're hiring. It's really good if they're doing that consistently on a repeating basis, because then people get to know that person as a participant of the group. They know who to go to. Instead of it's just like some random dude in a suit being like, hey, that's bad. It's bad. People are going to feel gross about it, and then that detracts the content, and the quality thing. All these things are kind of interlinked, and it's hard to balance it, but once you get it going, you can kind of see all the pieces. All right, so if you're doing a thing during the week and it's after work, remember that's dinner time, so be nice and provide some snacks. This makes logistics for your attendees much simpler. They can just kind of show up to your event instead of having to drive around some random neighborhood foraging for food before they get lost on the way to your thing. So yeah, just don't forget to bring water. The first few events we had, we just forget to bring water, and people are trying to get cups in the ice bucket, and it's a bad situation. Yeah, beer is nice, but it's not that crucial. But if you do provide it, there's a couple things to keep in mind. Make sure you're providing a safe environment for it, and just kind of be cognizant of this stuff. But there's also some things I didn't know about before we started doing this. There's insurance issues and HR issues at different venues, or even with different sponsors. So you just want to be clear about, when you're talking to venues, say hey, we'd like to have beer there. Is it okay? Most places are okay with it, but some places will say well, we can't have it on the premises, but on the patio, it's all right. So you just need to keep this stuff in mind. This is controversial. We were just talking in the IRC for the JSLA organizers not that long ago about changing kind of our policy on this. Generally, I think you should avoid places where opportunists and recruiters lurk. We have a surprising lack of recruiters at the event, mostly because we avoid meetup.com and LinkedIn. There isn't some list they can subscribe to and be like, oh, there's a bunch of developers over here, let me go, like that. And we noticed it really didn't make that big of an impact on our turnout or anything like that. And that might have been just because of where we are and having so many people around. So maybe experiment with this, but don't think that you need to be on meetup.com for your thing to exist, because JSLA is not on there, and if you come to our event, it's a real thing, right? Recruiters, we have some recruiters that come, but they're a little bit different than most. They're learning the code, and they have this dual purpose in attendance. They aren't just there for the recruiting aspect, but they want to learn, and they're generally excited about the topics and are friends with the other folks that are there. So if you're a participant and you're a recruiter, that's fine. just as long as you're participating, I think it's fine. I really, related to this recruiter thing, I would say it's intentional to remove space from opportunists. So don't allow them the room to operate. Just don't let random people kind of get up in front of the group and pitch for like hiring or selling these new products. Engage them though, say, hey, if you become a sponsor or we can host the event at your thing, we can get you into the queue and do that thing. But don't let them extract value from your group without putting something in first. It's important to be consistent for a lot of reasons. I would say mostly so that you're not confusing your audience. The confusion, consistency and like confusing your audience, it's funny the way these two things kind of relate. Yeah, it's funny the way these things kind of relate to each other, right? Because if you're having an event on the same night of the month, month in and month out, it's consistent. People know about it, so they don't need to get that much information. They just kind of know when and where to show up, and it's less cognitive load on them. And consistency really, really helps with that. So it's kind of related to that omnidirectional information flow too. It's really easy to burn out. So remember before I said make sure to ask for help. Really make sure to ask for help, and then don't be afraid to delegate. Right? You can give other people other jobs, and you can even take a month off or whatever if you have other co-organizers and coordinate with that with them. So just be really careful about this. This is really, really important. You want to make sure to record videos and take pictures and involve everyone to kind of participate in this. We got really lucky. My little brother and a friend of his do this like podcast video game interview thing. So they had all the equipment already, and they were kind of able to come and do this thing for us before we were able to get enough money to pay them to do it. But I would say that the quality really doesn't matter as much as just recording it. I mean, you can set up a DSLR on a tripod or something and record the talks. The most value you're going to get out of that is having some kind of archive. So you can show that to sponsors potentially and say, like, see, we're not just like some random thing. Like, look at all this content we produced. Look at the kind of speakers we had. And it's good for speakers to look at that and say, oh, like I know other topics, so I don't need to talk about this, in my presentation because that was talked about, 3 months ago or something. Also invite people to take pictures. I don't think you need to have an official photographer. Just put something up on Flickr, set it up so if you tag it with your group's name, then it all kind of happens there. And this helps getting everybody to kind of participate and archive and things. Plus, it's fun afterwards. In the IRC, the next day usually explodes after an event with pictures and things like that. So it's important to experiment with formats for your user group. The way we organize ours is it's 2 20-minute talks, which seems really short, but what we do right after that is we kick everyone out of the venue and make them walk like a block around the corner to a neighborhood bar. And this is where people can go and hang out and get to know each other and find out all the exciting projects they're working on. This is also where a lot of proposals for talks kind of come up just through natural conversations when you're sitting there and talking about it. So it's important for the whole community, aspect of these things. You can also solicit candid feedback through this. So having the drinks afterwards, you can go and talk to people and be like, hey, how was it? Did you like the presentation? Well, are we doing a good job or not? And having the space and time to do that right after is really important. And kind of related to the DIY punk ethic stuff I was saying before, it doesn't matter what you put out as much as that you just kind of put something out. Set up the venue, just go do it. It'll be easy, and then once you do that, people are gonna show up, and it's gonna be fine. So yeah, thanks. Come chat with me if you're excited about this stuff.